9 days of lockdown had turned Harrow's Reach into a strange, quiet place. The lifts on 3 decks would not open. Cargo that should have moved in an hour now took a full shift to reroute. Somewhere behind the wall panels, in the dark tangle of service ducts that ran through the station like veins, something was living and nobody could catch it. 11 crew members were in the medbay. Most of them had cuts down the arms and shoulders. One had lost part of an ear. They all told the same story in slightly different words. They had heard a scraping sound above them, they had looked up, and then something had come down fast and gone past them and been gone before they finished falling over. The emergency council met in a round room on the command deck, with too many chairs and not enough answers. Overseer Ovek sat at the head of the table. He was Senat, broad and heavy, with thick grey plating across his shoulders that clicked when he shifted his weight. He shifted his weight often. He had run this station for 19 years without a single serious incident report, and he could feel that record dying in front of him. Again, he said, from the start. Halen, the security chief, did not sit down. She was Senat too, younger, leaner, and she had the look of someone who had stopped sleeping several days ago. It came off the impounded smuggler ship, she said. Cargo hold, containment pod, seal failed during transfer. It went into the ducts in under 4 seconds. We have not had a clear visual since. You have drones. We had 4 drones, we have 2. It took the other 2 apart. Halen's voice stayed flat. We fired stun nets. It cut through them. We used tranquilizer darts, 3 different doses. The first one it dodged. The second one hit and it went down for about 11 seconds, then got up and left. The third one we never got close enough to fire. The hunter, Ovek said. Paid, arrived, spent 6 hours in the ducts, came out, refused to go back in, and left without collecting the rest of his fee. Halen paused. He would not say why. There was a long silence around the table. Somebody's chair creaked. Dahlia Roth sat near the far end, where the junior officers sat, and where nobody expected anyone to speak. She was human, which by itself made her interesting to about half the station and invisible to the other half. She worked in custodial and logistics. She was in the room only because the deck closures needed her signature, and she had been listening for 40 minutes without saying a word. The council moved on to the plan. Someone from engineering explained it. They would seal every duct outlet on decks 3, 4, and 5, then flood the entire network with freezing gas. It would take about 20 minutes. Nothing biological would survive it. They would open the panels afterward and remove whatever they found. Ovek asked if there was any objection. Sorry, Dahlia said. Can I ask something? Every head turned. Ovek looked at her the way a man looks at a piece of equipment that has made an unexpected noise. Go ahead, Officer Roth. You said it screams, Dahlia said. At night, that's in the reports. What does it sound like? Halen frowned. It sounds like an animal. Sure, but how often? Constantly, Halen's jaw tightened. Every night since it got loose, sometimes for hours. It is one of the reasons Deck 4 is unusable. The sound carries through the whole level. Dahlia nodded slowly, like someone doing arithmetic in her head. That's odd, though, she said, isn't it? I fail to see what is odd about a dangerous animal making noise, Ovek said. Well, it's just, Dahlia rubbed the back of her neck. It's hiding, right? It's hiding really well. It knows the ducks better than we do. It moves at night. It avoids the drones. That's something smart doing everything right. And then it screams for hours where everybody can hear it. She looked around the table. Nobody helped her. A hunter doesn't do that, she said. A hunter is quiet. Being loud is how you get found. Whatever that thing is doing up there, it isn't hunting us. If it wanted to hunt us, it would have killed somebody by now, and it hasn't. 11 injuries and not 1 dead. That's not a predator, that's a fight it doesn't want to be in. Then what is it doing? Halen said. Dahlia opened her mouth and then shut it again, because she did not actually know yet, and she had been raised not to guess out loud in front of people who outranked her. I don't know, she said, but I think it's worth finding out before we gas it. Ovek made a low sound in his chest that the translator did not bother with. Noted, he said, in a tone that meant discarded. Gas deployment in 1 cycle. Officer Roth, please confirm deck closures by end of shift. This council is finished. The room emptied. Dahlia stayed in her chair a moment, then got up and went to do her actual job. She was still doing it 11 hours later, alone on deck 4, moving sealed crates out of a corridor that had been declared unsafe for everyone except the person paid to move sealed crates out of it. The lights were at 15%. Her footsteps came back at her off the walls. Then it started. The sound came out of a grill high on the wall to her left. It began low and climbed, cracked in the middle, dropped and climbed again. Then it stopped. Then, about 10 seconds later, it happened again, exactly the same shape, the same break in the same place. Dahlia stood absolutely still in the dim corridor, with a crate handle in one hand. She knew that sound. She had grown up on a farm colony where the animals outnumbered the people 6 to 1, and every spring, somewhere in the dark, some newborn thing got separated from its mother and made exactly that noise. The same rising call, the same crack, the same pause, and then the same call again, because the only thing to do was try again, and again, and again, in case this time somebody came. It was not screaming at them. It was calling for someone, and it had been calling for 9 days, and nobody had answered. Dahlia set the crate down very carefully and looked up at the grill. "Oh," she said, "oh no." The station's xenobiology lab smelled faintly of salt. Urutal kept it that way on purpose because it reminded her of home and because nobody else ever came in to complain. At the start of the sleep cycle, somebody knocked. Urutal was small even for a bemi, covered in short grey feathers that lay flat when she was calm and stood up when she was not. They were standing up now. She opened the door and found the human from logistics standing there with her hands in her pockets. "I know it's late," Dahlia said. "I need the smuggler manifest." "That is a security document." "It's a cargo document. I'm cargo staff." Dahlia shrugged. "Technically I'm allowed. Nobody's ever going to check because nobody thinks I'm interesting enough to check on." Urutal considered this for a moment, then stepped aside. The manifest was short. Smugglers did not write much. Most of the entries were metals, medicine, and things called maintenance parts that were almost certainly not maintenance parts. The last line said, "1 specimen, live, origin undetermined." "That is what they write," Urutal said quietly, "when they know exactly what they have and would prefer not to write it down." "Right," Dahlia leaned closer to the screen. "Is there anything else? Feeding records, await anything?" There was. Buried 3 pages deep in the ship's own systems was an automatic log from the containment pod. It had recorded the creature's mass every day for 6 weeks. Urutal pulled the numbers into a chart and then went very still. "What?" Dahlia said. "It is losing mass," Urutal said, "steadily, since before it reached this station." She scrolled back, and before that it was gaining, quickly, very quickly. "Meaning?" Urutal's feathers flattened, which for her was the same as sitting down hard. "Meaning it is growing," she said. "This is not a full-grown creature, Officer Roth. The growth curve is the curve of a juvenile. If I compare it to similar body plans across the archive, and I must be careful because I am guessing, the developmental stage is roughly equivalent to a child of 4 years." Neither of them said anything for a while. Somewhere in the walls, faint and far away, the sound started up again. The rise, the crack, the pause. 9 days, Dahlia said. "It's been up there 9 days with nothing to eat and nobody answering it. 22, if you count the voyage." Dahlia turned and walked out without saying goodbye. Urutal, after a moment, put on her coat and followed. Ovek was not pleased to be woken. He was less pleased to find 2 of his junior staff in his outer office at an hour he considered personally offensive. He listened, he looked at the growth chart, he handed the pad back. "A dangerous animal," he said, "is dangerous regardless of its age." "It's not an animal," Dahlia said, "or it might not be, that's the point. 11 of my people are injured." 11 of your people are alive. Dahlia held his gaze, which was rude by Senat standards, and she knew it, and she did it anyway. It's fast enough to take apart a drone. If it wanted anyone dead, they'd be dead. It's frightened, sir. It's frightened and it's starving and it's screaming for someone, and we're about to freeze it in a wall. Halin had arrived by then, still in her duty harness. She had been listening from the doorway. She is not wrong about the injuries, Halin said. I have gone over the medical reports twice. Every wound is on the arms or the shoulders, not one on the throat, not one on the back. She paused. It goes for what is reaching toward it. Ovek's plating clicked. And what exactly is being proposed? 10 hours, Dahlia said. Deck 4, everybody clears out and I go in alone. Alone? Alone, I'll sign whatever waiver you want. If it kills me, it's my fault, and you get to gas it afterward with a very clean conscience. Ovek stared at her. What equipment? He said at last. Weapons, armor, restraint gear, tell me your list. Dahlia counted on her fingers. 1 cargo container, cheap one, I'm going to cut it up, a thermal blanket, about 40 kilos of protein paste, and quiet, that's it. The room went very still. It was Halin who spoke first, and her voice had changed. That is not a capture plan. No, Dahlia agreed. Then what is it? Dahlia thought about how to explain it, and could not find a way that sounded like anything except nonsense. It's a place to hide, she said. That's all. Right now the whole station is big and bright and full of things trying to grab it. I'm going to make one small dark thing that isn't. Ovek looked at Urutal. You are the biologist. Is this sound? Urutal's feathers were standing straight up again. I do not know, she said honestly. Overseer, I have been reviewing the archive since we spoke. I want to say something and I want you to understand that I have checked it 3 times. She swallowed. No member species of the Assembly has any recorded practice of this kind. None. We do not approach dangerous creatures. We contain them or we remove them. There is no third option in our literature. There is no word for it in any of our 4 languages. And in theirs, Ovek said, nodding at Dahlia. In theirs, said Urutal, there are about 900 words for it. Ovek was quiet for a long moment. He was thinking about the incident report he would have to file either way. One version said an unidentified organism was destroyed following standard procedure. The other version said a junior human officer was killed after being permitted to sit in a corridor with a box. Neither version was good, but the first one had a growth chart attached to it now and a number that said 4 years old, and Ovek had 3 children of his own. 10 hours, he said, not 12. Deck 4 is cleared at the start of the next shift. Officer Roth, you will wear a locator. If your vital signs stop, security enters. Thank you, sir. Do not thank me, Ovek turned away. I am giving you 10 hours to prove that your species is either extraordinary or extremely stupid, and I will be honest with you, Officer Roth, I do not yet know which. Dahlia went to find a cargo container. The container was orange and dented and had spent most of its life carrying filter cores. Dahlia cut it down the seams with a hand blade, folded it into a rough open cube about 1 meter across, and cut 1 hole in the front. Then she taped the corners. It took her 20 minutes, and it looked exactly like what it was, which was a box made of cardboard by a person with no craft skills at all. She lined the inside with the thermal blanket and pushed it against the wall on deck 4, directly under the widest grill in the corridor. Then she set the bowl of protein paste down beside the box, not inside it, beside it, so that nothing had to go into a small space to eat. Then she walked 6 meters away, sat down on the deck plating with her back against the opposite wall, turned her body at an angle so she was not facing the grill straight on, and stopped moving. In the security office, Halin and Urutal watched the feed. What is she doing? Halin said after 10 minutes. Nothing. I can see that. When does she begin? Urutal's feathers rippled. She has begun. The first hour was nothing. The corridor lights were at 15%. Air moved through the vents with a low sound like someone breathing in another room. Dahlia sat with her hands loose on her knees and looked at the floor about a meter in front of her feet. In the second hour, there was a sound in the ducts. It came closer, went away, came closer again from a different direction. It was checking her from more than one angle. Dahlia did not look up. In the third hour, something appeared behind the grill. Two eyes, wet and dark and low to the metal, sat there in the gap and did not blink. Dahlia knew it was there. She could feel it the way anyone feels being watched. She kept her eyes on the floor and she started talking. She talked about nothing. That was the whole point. She told the empty corridor about the farm colony where she grew up, about the dust storms that came in the third month and got into everything including the food, about a neighbor who once tried to teach a bird to say his name and only ever taught it to swear. She described the sky there, which was a color she had never found the right word for in any language including her own. She sang, badly, a song her mother had sung badly before her, and she stopped in the middle because she could not remember the second verse, and she said so out loud to nobody, and then she started it again from the beginning. Her voice stayed flat and low and boring. That was deliberate too, nothing rising, nothing sharp, just a sound that went on and never once came toward the grill. In the fifth hour, Halen said, "She has not moved in 5 hours. No, I have interrogated prisoners with less patience than that." Urutal did not answer. She was writing. In the sixth hour, it came out. It came down the wall, not through the grill but around it, prying the panel edge open with a hooked limb and pouring out of the gap in one long motion. It hit the deck without a sound. On the feed it was awful. 6 limbs, 4 for the ground and 2 folded high against the chest with hooks like harvest blades. A long low body. A wide flat head with those wet dark eyes set forward, which every biologist in the assembly would tell you means a hunter. Its hide was dull grey, and its ribs stood out through it so clearly that Urutal made a small, unhappy sound. It circled Dahlia. It came within 2 meters at her back, where she could not see it. Dahlia kept talking about dust storms. It hissed. The sound filled the corridor. It struck twice at the air near her shoulder, close enough to move her hair, and did not touch her. Halen's hand went to the door control. "Wait," said Urutal. "It is going to open her throat." "It is asking her to run," Urutal said. "It is asking her 3 times. Nothing on this station has ever failed to run." Dahlia did not run. Dahlia did not stop talking. She had done this before with a barn dog that had been kicked by its last owner, and with a colony hound that had gone half wild in the hills, and once with a very unpleasant goat that had put her in a clinic for 2 days. The trick was always the same, and it was not a trick. You made yourself the most boring object in the room, and you waited for the animal to decide. The creature stopped hissing. It went to the bowl. It ate the way starving things eat, fast and badly, watching her the entire time over the rim, ready to run at any moment. It finished 40 kilos of protein paste in under 6 minutes, and then stood there breathing hard. Then it looked at the box. It went around the box twice. It touched the cardboard with one hook, gently, testing whether it would grab back. It pushed at the edge. It put its head in the hole and pulled it out again immediately. Then it went in. The box was too small for it, really. Part of one limb still stuck out of the hole, but it was dark inside and warm from the blanket, and it was small, and everything else on Harrow's reach for 22 days had been enormous and bright and full of grabbing hands and flying nets. The corridor went quiet. Dahlia stopped talking. She listened. From inside the box came the sound of an animal breathing, then a shudder, then a long, unsteady noise that was not the calling scream, but something lower and rougher, and then nothing at all except sleep. For 9 days, it had called every night. That night it did not call. Dahlia sat where she was for another 2 hours, because getting up would have been the loudest thing that had happened all day. Then she pulled her knees up, put her head back against the wall, and cried very quietly for about 90 seconds, and then stopped and went back to being boring. In the security office, nobody had spoken for a long time. Halin was standing with both hands flat on the console, staring at the screen, at the orange cardboard box, with a monster asleep inside it, and a woman on the floor across the corridor, guarding it from nothing. She said one word, in her own language. The translator considered it, and declined to render it, and left the space blank. There is a particular silence that happens when a room full of experienced people watch a recording for the third time and still cannot explain it. The council had that silence now. The feed played on the wall, 6 meters of empty corridor, a woman sitting badly on a floor, a grey shape circling her, striking twice at the air, then eating, then folding itself into a cardboard box like a letter going into an envelope. Ovek raised a hand, and the recording stopped. Officer Roth. Sir, what weapon did you use? Dahlia had slept 4 hours, and it had not been enough. None, sir. Then what chemical? Ovek's plating clicked. There is a sedative in the protein paste. There is a scent agent. There is something. There's protein paste in the protein paste. The room did not like that. Dahlia could feel the temperature of it change. She had expected surprise, maybe even some grudging respect. She had not expected the thing she was actually getting, which was fear. Because the alternative explanation was worse than a hidden weapon. A hidden weapon they understood. A hidden weapon they could buy. Overseer Urutal stood up. Her feathers were flat and her voice was steady, which cost her something. May I present a finding? I have not slept, and I would like to say this before I lose my nerve. Ovek gestured. I have searched the full assembly archive, Urutal said. Biological, cultural, historical, 4 member species, 61 client worlds, 11,000 years of record. She paused. There is no case anywhere of any species other than humanity forming a lasting bond of trust with an unrelated predatory animal. None. Somebody at the table said that was not possible. Everyone had working beasts. We have working beasts, Urutal agreed. We have them because we control them. We take the young of harmless grazers, we breed out the fear response, and we manage them with fences and gates and drugs. That is management. That is what all of us do. Her small hands gripped the edge of the table. Humans do that too, and then humans do something else, which none of us do, and which I cannot find a word for in any of our 4 languages. And what is that? Ovek said. Urutal looked at Dahlia. They walk up to something that could kill them, she said, and they offer it food and they wait, and they keep waiting, and when it bites them, they come back the next day. Ovek turned. Officer Roth, explain this. Dahlia rubbed her eyes. I don't really know how, sir. Try. So she tried. She told them about a dog on her grandmother's farm. She had to explain what a dog was, which took a while, and the explanation kept getting worse instead of better. She said that thousands of years ago the animal had been a wolf, and a wolf was a thing that hunted humans in the dark, in groups, and was very good at it. She said that at some point some human, some specific person whose name nobody would ever know, had been sitting by a fire and had seen a wolf at the edge of the light, and had thrown it a piece of meat instead of a spear. Why? Halin asked. Nobody knows, Dahlia said. There's no good reason. It was a bad idea. It was probably the worst idea anyone had that year, she shrugged. But they kept doing it. Generation after generation, throwing meat into the dark, and 40,000 years later my grandmother's dog slept at the foot of my bed every night until I was 11, and when the storms came it would get between me and the door. It was bred from a line that used to be made to fight wolves. It weighed more than I did. It was the gentlest thing I have ever known. That is one animal, someone said. That's not one animal, Dahlia sat forward. That's most of them. Half the things humans love best are things that used to eat us or things that could still kill us if they felt like it. We ride some of them. We put some of them in our houses. We name them. When they die, we bury them and we don't work the next day. She spread her hands. It's not a strategy, sir. It's just what we are. We see something scared and something in us sits down on the floor. Silence. That is not comforting, Ovek said at last. No, sir. You understand why. I think so, sir. Halin understood better than anyone at that table. and it had been growing in her since the 6th hour of the recording. Everyone in the assembly had spent 11 years quietly agreeing on the same assessment of humanity: physically ordinary, technologically behind, emotionally excessive, soft. It had been almost affectionate, the way they said it. But Halin had watched a member of that soft species sit down unarmed in front of a starving predator, refuse to run when it told her 3 times to run, and win. Not by fighting, by being calm for 6 hours in a row while something that could open her throat walked circles behind her back. That was not softness. Halin had commanded soldiers for 30 years, and she knew exactly what it was. It was nerve. It was the deepest nerve she had ever seen, in a shape so gentle that nobody had recognized it as nerve at all. Her people, faced with that creature, had done the only sane thing. They had built a plan to freeze it in a wall. The humans had brought it dinner. Overseer Halin said, "I withdraw the gas deployment permanently." Ovek nodded slowly. The meeting broke up without any real conclusion, which was fine because there was work to do. Deck 4 stayed closed, but now it was closed to protect what was in it rather than what was outside it. Dahlia went back twice a day with food. On the 4th day, the creature let her put the bowl down within 2 meters. On the 6th day, it came out while she was still there and ate in front of her. On the 7th, it fell asleep in the box, with the hole facing her instead of the wall, which Urutal, writing furiously, noted as the single most significant event of the entire week. On the 8th day, in a log entry, Urutal noticed something else and flagged it with a small marker of alarm. Officer Roth had stopped saying it. She was saying he now, and she had started calling him Little Trouble, and he had started coming when she used it. A ship under full diplomatic seal came out of transit on the 14th day and asked for a docking clamp in language so formal that the station's translator slowed down to handle it. It was Drevani. Nobody on Harrow's Reach had ever seen a Drevani ship this close. They kept to their own space, they answered assembly letters late, and they had a reputation for grief customs that other species found difficult to talk about. Second Mother San came down the ramp alone. She was tall and grey and stood on 4 limbs with 2 folded high against her chest, and every single person waiting on the dock understood, all at once, and without anyone saying a word, exactly what had been living in their walls for 3 weeks. Ovek's plating clicked once, very loudly in the silence. "You are holding a child of ours," San said. They took her to a briefing room and told her everything: the smuggler ship, the raided outpost the traffickers had hit 11 months earlier, which the Drevani had reported and the assembly had filed, the containment pod, the escape, the 22 days without food, the scream in the ducts. San listened without moving. When they finished, she said, "The young are taken before speech. He would not know his own name. He would not know mine." "He was calling for someone," Dahlia said, "every night." "He was calling for a shape," San said, "not a person. He is too young to hold a person." Her voice did not change at all, which was somehow much worse than if it had. "I thank you for your care of him. I will take him now, and I will give him release." The translator paused before the last word, the way it did when it was not confident, and then offered it anyway. Dahlia said, "What does release mean?" "He has been lost for 11 months, said San. "By our custom, a cub lost past his first season does not return. He is grieved. His place is closed. What comes back is not the cub. It is a thing that has been in the dark too long, and it will never hold speech. And it will never hold a family, and it will spend 40 years hurting and hurting others. We do not permit that. We are merciful." The room went cold. "He was in a box," Dahlia said. San's head turned. 6 hours after I sat down, he came out of the wall and he ate, and then he crawled into a cardboard box and went to sleep 2 meters from a stranger. Dahlia's voice was shaking and she let it. "He is not a thing that has been in the dark too long. He is a scared kid who has been waiting for somebody to come and get him for 11 months, and somebody finally sat still long enough, and it was me, and I am the wrong person. I'm not his. You are. You do not know our customs." "No, and you don't know mine. Dahlia put a data pad on the table and slid it across. 10 hours, watch it, then tell me he can't come back. San did not touch the pad. Ovek said quietly, Second Mother, legally the child is yours and this station has no standing. I want that understood by everyone in this room, including Officer Roth. He paused. But I have been an overseer for 19 years and I have never once asked a guest for anything. I am asking, watch the recording. San watched the recording. It took 10 hours and she watched all of it, alone, in a dark room, and nobody went in. When she came out, her formality was still perfect, and something behind it was not. Your custom, she said to Dahlia, explain it. We go get our kids, Dahlia said. That's all it is. If a kid is lost, you go in after them. If they've gone wild, you go in after them. If they bite you when you find them, you get bitten and you go anyway, and you keep going every day for as long as it takes, and sometimes it takes years, and it is ugly and it doesn't always work. She shook her head. But we don't have a rule that says a child who has been gone too long stops being a child. We would never survive writing that down. We wrote it down, San said, because our children came back broken and we could not fix them, and it was easier to say they were already gone. Yes, Dahlia said, I know, that's what it always is. You believe our law is wrong. I don't think it's law, Dahlia met her eyes. I think it's despair that got old enough that everybody started calling it law. Nobody ever went in after one, so nobody ever found out. Halin spoke then, from the wall, and everyone turned, because a security chief speaking against a visiting envoy's sovereign custom was the kind of thing that ended careers. Second Mother, Halin said, I have hunted that child through my own station for 3 weeks with everything I had, nets, drones, poison. He beat all of it, and in 22 days of being hunted and starving, he did not kill one member of my crew, not one. She straightened. I do not know what your people believe the dark does to a cub, but whatever is in my walls came out of 11 months of it with its mercy still working. Mine would not have. Ovek said nothing at all, and for Ovek, in front of a diplomat, that was the bravest thing he had ever done in his life. San stood in the middle of the room, 200 years old, holding a custom her people had carried for 11,000 years, and looked at a species that had been in the assembly for 11. Show me the corridor, she said. They warned her about the hooks. They warned her about the speed, and about the 2 drones, and about the 11 crew in the medbay, and Second Mother San listened to all of it politely, and then walked onto deck 4 anyway. Dahlia went with her. The lights were at 15%. The orange box sat against the wall under the grill, dented now, taped in 3 new places because Little Trouble had put a hook through the side, and Dahlia had patched it rather than replace it, because he did not like it when things changed. The 2 of them sat down on the floor 6 meters away. How long? San asked. Depends on him. And we do nothing. We do nothing, Dahlia said. Doing nothing is the whole job. It's harder than it sounds. It took 4 hours. He came down the wall the way he always did, silent, pouring out of the gap in one motion, and stopped dead when he saw the second shape. He did not know her. There was no recognition in it at all. He had been taken before speech and before memory, and San was a stranger sitting on the floor of a corridor. But he stopped, and he stayed stopped. Because something in the way she held herself, in the shape of her against the dim light, in the smell of her, in the particular stillness of her folded upper limbs, ran into something in him that was older than memory and did not need to be taught. He made the sound. It was the one from the ducts. Low, rising, cracking in the middle, dropping, rising again, 22 days of it into empty pipes, 11 months of it before that, into a container in a smuggler's hold, into nothing, into nobody. And San answered. She made the same sound back, exactly, with the same break in the same place, because it was not a scream and never had been. It was a word. It was the first word their people ever learn, and the only one a cub is born already knowing, and it means where are you, and the answer means here. He crossed 6 meters of deck plating and went into her. Second Mother San, envy of 200 years, who had come aboard to perform a mercy, and had not permitted herself to hope for anything since long before Harrow's Reach was built, sat on a cargo deck floor with a filthy, starving cub jammed under her chest, and entirely stopped being a diplomat. Dahlia got up quietly and left them there and went and stood in the corridor outside and looked at the ceiling for a while. He would not leave without the box. That was the one difficult negotiation of the entire affair. The Drevani offered him a proper transport cradle, lined and heated and worth more than Dahlia's annual pay, and he screamed at it and went back into the cardboard and would not come out. So in the end, 4 Drevani honor guards carried a flattened orange shipping container up the ramp of a diplomatic vessel, folded and taped and patched, with more ceremony than they had shown for most treaties, and stowed it in the forward hold. Things changed after that slowly, the way real things do. The Drevani opened their lost cub custom for review, which nobody had done in 11,000 years. The first recovery mission launched 4 months later. It failed. The second one failed. The third one came home with 2 cubs, and the fourth came home with 1, and by the end of the year, there was a word in the Drevani language for going in after them, and it was a new word, and they had borrowed the idea from a species 11 years old. Urutal published her paper. She had expected it to be read by about 40 people. It was not read by 40 people. It went across the whole assembly, and it changed something, and the change was not admiration exactly. It was a quiet, permanent adjustment in the way every other species thought about the humans. The line that got repeated most was not from the conclusion. It was from the middle, where Urutal had written that humanity was the only species known to make friends out of things that hurt it, and that no one had yet determined whether this should be recorded as a virtue or as a warning. Ovek filed his incident report. He sat over it for a long time. In the field marked cause of resolution, where he was expected to list equipment, personnel, and cost, he eventually typed 1 cardboard box. He left it there and sent it and never explained it to anyone. Halen requested a transfer to the Human Liaison Division. It was a step down in rank. She took it anyway. When her old colleagues asked why, she said she had spent 30 years learning how to recognize the dangerous species in a room and had recently discovered she had been getting it wrong in a way she found professionally unacceptable. And Dahlia Roth went back to logistics, because that was her actual job, and there were crates on Deck 7 that were not going to move themselves. 5 months later, a message came in for her, routed through 3 relays, marked with a Drevani homeworld seal that made the comms officer sit up straight before he realized it was addressed to somebody in cargo. There was no text, just an audio file 11 seconds long. Dahlia opened it in the corridor. It was a young voice, rough and unpracticed, working very hard at something difficult. It tried once and got it wrong. It tried again and got it half right. On the third attempt, slowly and carefully, with enormous effort, it managed the whole word. Dahlia. She sat down on the deck plating with her back against the wall, in the same posture she had held for 6 hours in the dark, and played it again. They had all made the same mistake, every one of them, for 11 years. The Senat and the Bemi and the Drevani and everybody else who had looked at this species and seen something ordinary and warm and not particularly impressive, and filed it under harmless. They had assumed that anything that gentle must also be small.